Ladies and gentlemen, readers, bleeders and guilty pleaders, welcome along to Joe's Bibles YouTube channel where we talk about books and little else. And I'm new around here, and so I went searching on the Google internet and I have found the BookTube Newbie Tag, which will allow me to introduce myself to you. I have a few books ensconced around me so to show you what I like to read and to give you a little bit of the gist of what might be expected here. So here are, I think there are, BookTube Newbie Tag, there are a few, about 10 questions, something like that, so here we are. Why did you start this channel? And that would be really because I'm an adamantine and mercantile narcissist and just a terribly arrogant person with a Napoleonic desire to have men and women work under me, and so I need some kind of media empire, and the best way to do that is by becoming popular on Hit. Now, I'm kidding, of course. I will repeat the much mentioned BookTube canard by saying that I simply don't have anybody to talk to about books. Unfortunately, none of my family read. My father is a farmer, Russian farmer in Vladivostok. He works for 25.5 hours a day, and my mother is a Florentine nurse who tends to the sick for about 16 or 17 hours a day. Neither of them live here, and I have nobody to talk to. And so I thought I'd do this digitally. Okay, question number 2. What are some unique things that you can bring to BookTube? Well, I happen to be a human adult male, and there is a curious dearth of male booktubers, so I thought I could add to the circle a little bit. There's one bloke called a Dude That Reads or something, and a few others, Steve Donahue, Mark Nash, etc. But there aren't an awful lot of boys, not an awful lot of lads that do it, so I thought I would contribute. And I believe I've got a bit of a talent for extemporaneity. I don't need to script things, I shan't edit, I may not even do thumbnails. How very primitive of me. So that would be very good. What else can I bring to BookTube? Yeah, just a reasonably sharp jawline, centre parting, reasonable clothes, that sort of thing, and hopefully wonderful material that you will all enjoy. Question number 3. What are you most excited about for this channel? Again, I should like to find bedfellows and fellow travellers, so to talk about books. That would be very good. I would also, I wouldn't really mind doing excerpts on other things perhaps as well, because as bountiful and beautiful as books are, they also have all sorts of other thematic tendrils along which we might talk, so that would be very nice, wouldn't it? Question number 4. Why do you love reading? Again, the usual commendations about it being transportative and you walking into a new world every day. That all seems a little bit dewy-eyed, but to some extent it is true. That would be largely it. I also do it so as to, I don't know. Yeah, just that would largely be it. Why do you love to read? That would be it. Yeah, and also you see a lot of people that read solely for the pleasure of having read, which to me has always been completely counterintuitive, whereas I think we ought to just desire reading to be pleasurable in and of itself rather than to some sort of, I don't know, intellectual end or something like that. Oh, and also just coming to me, we live in such a fast culture, don't we, folks? There are murders one week, and then there's terrorism the next week, and then we're always on our phones, and things travel at 300 miles an hour, and so it is nice to sit down in the calm of a living room and to open a book. That is one of the most marvelous experiences known to man, and not oft done. And so it's also a nice little niche for us people who read. Question number 5. What books got you into reading? Well, Christ. Are we ready for the diatribe? Are we ready for the disquisition? Well, I was a typically sort of skittish and irreverent young boy until I was about 15 or 16. I was a complete and utter twat. I was, reasonably intelligent, but academically nothing special. And then you have that well-regarded captive teacher that shows you that reading is cool. They're not somebody that drills things into you and sets you prolific texts and makes literature and all published works seem like some inaccessible cloud in the sky. Whereas you have a very fine teacher who tells you, as I say, who introduces you to a reading club and clique and coterie, and tells you that reading is cool. And that gentleman knows full well who he is. We're still in contact, given that I've now left school and university. We talk reasonably regularly, and we're never drunk and texting him. I thank him weekly for introducing me to reading. And then, as regards what sort of books or particular personalities got me into reading, I remember it will probably be Will Self, who is how to describe Will Self? He's a rather bizarre and circumlocucious English writer, and it was via a magazine. It was via print media. I think it was in Esquire. He was writing about, oh goodness knows what. But I opened Esquire, probably because I bought it for the cover or something of that description, and the first piece in there was by Will Self, and it was on a usually ridiculous title, On the Nature of Being Tall. And all of a sudden, having barely read my entire life, I suddenly found that he was a gentleman who had, again, made learning and reading cool and used these enormously long words and strung sentences together, the like of which I'd never even heard nor seen, never, let alone read, and it was marvellous and brilliant, and I just fell in love, and I thought, I just then sought endlessly to emulate that. It was really marvellous. And so I read everything that he read, and then obviously by connection you then come across Martin Amis, whose book I have here, whose work I will go into in a little while. I've got money here. I'm dubious about Martin Amis, but to a 16-year-old boy who had only read stuff about insubstantive English houses and the farmer having sex with the sermon maid and weird goblins running around the hills, for somebody to start talking about drinking and becoming entirely focused upon pre-apple navel gazing, that at the time, ashamedly, was very interesting. So Martin Amis's fiction, and what also, what books got you into reading? That would be about it, really. And then from there, you then start to look in the footnotes, and then you identify writers that are similar to that, and then as soon as you start Googling things, then of course the algorithmic tendencies just make sure that you are fed content that is similar to, in my case, Martin Amis and Will Self, and now I read voraciously and widely. Question 6, what questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? Well, I would need a whole evening with my absolute favourite booktuber, which is the very, well, endlessly interesting Steve Donahue. He lives, I believe, in Boston, Mass. I need a whole evening with wine and calzones with him, because I couldn't possibly probe him with just one question. He would need a 12-hour drilling. Who else would I like to talk to? Oh, Mark Nash. He ought to... he really ought to change his curtains. I would say, why, Mark, haven't you changed those curtains? 1972 ended approximately 350 years ago, sir. So you need to change those. And then, I would also like to talk to Carolyn Marie Reeds. She's an illustrator, and if she could do me a very fine sketch of Martin Amis, that would be wonderful, Caroline, if heaven forbid you happen to stumble across this video. If you could, if I could commission you to do a sketch of Martin Amis in that very similar style that you have done. I think you've done sort of Chekhov and Tolstoy and things of that nature, so that would be lovely if you could do that. I think that's about it. Oh, and also I should like to ask YouTube, very, very popular YouTubers, booktubers that will remain nameless, about just how it is they're able to be continually and irrevocably fake. That would be nice, but we needn't start off right just now. Okay, question 7. What challenges will be the hardest to overcome when starting a BookTube channel? Oh, well, probably the biggest challenge will be turning down the first Nike deal. That will be contrary to my my mercantile desire to be the wealthiest man on the planet. and all the other concomitants that will come with that, the commercialism, the body shop wanting to have me as their first male figure because of my beautiful skin, Gymshark wanting me to wear skin-tight leggings and tops. All of those things are going to be very difficult to turn down, but so as to remain earnest and, for now, innocent, I will turn them down for you. But no, in all seriousness, the hardest thing, I'm not sure really. Keeping it fresh, but then again, I'd like to think I'm reasonably vivacious and capable of keeping things fresh. So I'm not too sure. I don't think there will be many challenges. Oh, not being cancelled and controlling my potty mouth, because I do make a Texan trucker sound like a nursery teacher at times. So I've got a terribly bad ailment of swearing, but I shan't do that on here. Question 8. When did you start reading? That seems to be linked to question 4 or 5. But I always read disparately and dispassionately until I was about 17 or 18, and then The Captive Teacher, along with the discovery of self-marked names, as I've already described and detailed, helps as well. I think that was about it. But yeah, I wasn't one of these ridiculously Byronic, precocious people that could read Gujarat by the time I was 4 or anything, unconventional like that. My family are entirely normal, which is a horrible phrase, but they did not. They read to me and didn't actively discourage it, but they didn't actively encourage it either, because I think we forget on this platform that in fact we are not an immense minority, because that's an oxymoron, but we are a weird archipelago minority. We really are not typical of the species. Nobody reads anymore. They'd much rather watch TikToks of donkeys jumping off of cliffs or whatever. So they were just very typical of that, in that they never really read themselves. They had plenty of books around, but they were mostly decorative. So I wasn't actively encouraged as a child, but I found my way to it, much like ice hockey players find their way to the ice, I suppose. Question 9. Where do you read? Well, there's a very fine bed that I lay in every evening to sleep, and also where I do most of my reading. There's a nice access to fresh air there. Nothing ridiculously elaborate. This is at my mum's, and then at my dad's I will sit on his very, very grand Chesterfield armchair with all of his militaria in the living room as company, and that's how I beguile most of the evening hours. And what kinds of books do you like to read? Now then, this might be a little bit more of an extended section, because I have gathered together an assortment. So, the first two, again, people that shall go on to mention hereafter. We have Martin Amis, this particular novel, Money, and a collection of non-fiction by himself called Feeding Frenzy. Both have about, 400 or 500 pages in length. And again, this book is... My opinions on Martin Amis have changed somewhat. When I was a 16, 17, 18-year-old, reasonably aimless child, essentially, some infantile or juvenile young boy with desires of becoming a sports star, I didn't know what was good and what was bad, because when I awoke one morning to become a reader, this was the first book that I read, and found it to be, as I say, revelatory, in that there's a line about this in Alan Bennett. I think it's by Hector that gives it to a student, about the feeling of a writer grabbing you, and that doesn't even seem metaphorical. They do seem to just be writing solely for you, and this is what I felt with this book. It's essentially it's John Self, who I believe, I haven't read it it's a good 18 months. He is just I think he's working on a film and doing it terribly, and it's full of louts and sweatiness and visits to brothels and things of that nature. So it is very good, and there's an excellent description of male ejaculation, which to a 17-year-old who had never seen it converted to prose was beautiful. Then we have Feeding Frenzy, which is, as I say, a collection of non-fiction. which is marvellous by I Will Self-Feeding Frenzy, which is very good. I picked it up at a charity shop, I believe. What apology can I possibly offer to the reader for this hypertrophy of verbiage? That basically sums it up. It's restaurant reviews and bits and bobs about Tony Blair. It's nice to see that contemporary people didn't regarded him as a sanctimonious git even then. So that's those two. And then moving on, we have... again, this is just a sort of typical ensemble. It's not compendious. I've not got 15 books down here. I've got Hannah Arendt's Eichmann in Jerusalem. This is a marvellous... What would you say? It's marvellous in how it grasps subtlety, because it doesn't... What would you say? It's been completely lambasted and lampooned for, I don't know, supposedly exonerating the industrialised mass murder of an entire peoples by Nazi Germany. Obviously it doesn't do that, and anybody who says that evidently has not read the book. But it is, first of all, it's written beautifully. That's always a prerequisite for me. I don't care what you've got to say. You have to say it well and eloquently. If you don't do that, then you're going to be windmilled out the window. You're going to be positively defenestrated. But this is couched in gorgeous prose, and it posits for once that perhaps somebody who had done unremitting, inexcusable evil wasn't either an unbelievably evil person or wasn't altogether conscious of the evilness or the malevolence of their acts, potentially. That's a horrid summary, but read the thing, it'll take you a couple of days. It's marvellous. And we have Signor Byron, Lord Byron's selected poetry. I have a close to 200-year-old entire collection of him just behind me there, that was given as a gift by, I believe, the Eton cricket coach on his leaving Eton was given it by Lord Mountbatten or something like that. I have no idea. But it's a very old text. And Byron is, by a distance, my favourite poet. I believe him to be... I'm trying not to mix up subjectivity with objectivity. Just because he's your favourite, Joe, doesn't mean that he's the best. But he is convincingly, I believe, the finest poet writing in the English language. Goodness me, that's outlandish, isn't it? Wordsworthians are going to be turning in their graves. I believe he makes Shakespeare's sonnets look like, fridge magnet crayon works of children at nursery. He is just... the poetry is just unendingly beautiful. It's just so perfect. He just has a talent for very concisely and just very concisely grasping some quite complex things. He describes people so multifariously in the space of 4 lines, where most people it would take 4 or 5 days to do something of that, or 4 or 5 pages, or 4 or 5 chapters. He seems to be so talented at just depicting a human being and grasping them from the floor. He was also famously precocious and scholarly at the age of 4 months or whatever, and some of his stuff from age of 15 right up to his death in 1824. And I will hereby announce a read-along that is going to occur probably from the new year, because I believe in mid-February it will have been 200 years since his death in Missolonghi in Greece. We'll go through the biography, we'll go through letters and journals, we'll do read-along of all the most notable works, and I shall give you my intensely eloquent and helpful reactions to them. So that's Byron. A few more. We've got Miss Elliot, or Miss Mary Ann Evans with Middlemarch, which I believe one famous critic called something like the world's most godly text written by God, or something of that nature. It is beautiful. Immensely quotable. The amount of underlinings in this book is just obscene. Underlining in this book from me is obscene. It's full of very lively characters that aren't self-consciously in a novel, which is a rather good thing to behold. So that's that. And then we've just finished... speaking collectively, I've just finished Saul Bellow's Herzog, which I want to talk to you about briefly, because I finished it today, And there's a bee in my bonnet, Burrows. There's a bee in my bonnet. Bellow is inextricably linked with Martin Amis because Amis cited him as his, I don't know, his literary father, some sort of novelistic family. And Martin Amis is just sickeningly in love with all of Bellow's writing, and so which is the only reason that I keep butting my head against his door. But I'm afraid, ladies and gents, that Mr. Bellow is not even close to being one of my favourites. He is... If Bellow teaches us anything, it's that literary success and, cultural acuity and fame are not acquired by skill and diligence. They're acquired by pot luck and feeding a load of premeditated prejudices to your acolytes. He doesn't seem to... Let's not mess this up, Joe. Put it this way. If, for example, just an average 40-year-old male had submitted this to a publisher anonymously, they would have burnt it instantly on reading it, because it is so poor. And yet, Bellow's name is above the cover, and therefore we're supposed to laud it like sycophants, and I don't want to do that. But I do have one small section that I would like to read, which is essentially a small microcosm of what is probably 200,000 words or 150,000 words of bilge. So it's Moses Herzog, an irresolute, failed writer, academic, failed husband, unashamedly misogynistic, an unapologetic philanderer, all the rest of it. And he writes these deeply philosophical diatribes about philosophy, all sorts of nonsense, and he is writing a particular one here. It's about Marx or something like that, but just engage with this for 1 second. Whereas a man like me has shown the arbitrary withdrawal of proud subjectivity from the collective and historical progress of mankind, and that is true of lower class emotional boys and girls who adopt the aesthetic mode, the mode of rich sensibility, seeking to sustain their own version of existence under the crushing weight of mass, italicized. What Marx described as that material weight. Now, ladies and gents, boys and girls, if you could, upon listening to that, tell me what on earth the author is trying to imbue upon his readers. Answers on a postcard, please, because that is so very apathetic. And what have I written in the margin? I've underlined it, as you can see. I've written, uncaringly terrible. I'd love to know what this sentence means. And essentially, it's 150,000 words of that, with occasional bits. I mean, there's a much lauded and famous description, I believe in Manhattan, of a digger going through the skeleton of a building or something like that. And it's, look, there are descriptive idiosyncrasies in here. There's clearly talent. There are pages worth of gripping prose, but most of it is nonsense, absolute nonsense, and arrant gynophobia. He just clearly, Moses Herzog is supposed to despise women, and yet that serves no later purpose in the text. And so you just sense that it's Bellow just riffing on prejudices, whilst drunk as well. You sense, for instance, with all the spiritualism that's in here and things of that nature, that Bellow was at least half cut when doing this. And it's a damn shame. But Amos loves him, I don't. So, yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed, ladies and gentlemen. I have rabbited on rather a lot, but that's me. I'm rather garrulous. But I shall seek to make things more terse and hopefully more laconic in the future. But thank you very much for watching. This is me. Thank you, BookTube.